Oh, it's your bro True Jew tapping in with y'all. I want to go live real quick. I was debating even going live on this subject, but it need to be spoke on. And yeah, you read the title right. It's about Emmett Till. Another sad day in the Emmett Till saga. Another sad day for Mississippi, if you ask me. Uh, I'm speaking on it primarily because our people are still emotionally uh, being attacked by this. And the genetic remembrance of this horrible attack is still very much alive because justice has never been served in the land of the free, home of the brave. We've seen justice for all sorts of groups and all sorts of ideas that would even go against the very so-called Bible that this country was built on, one nation under God, right? And yet, I have to wonder where God is in all of the actions that we see those who are ruling this country and who are leading this country. Where is God within them, or is this a different God? Because we know by this time we all should know if you support True Jew channel, then you should know by now that all gods ain't the same. And just because somebody say they worship God, at one time that was acceptable. Oh, he believe in God, she believe in God. But at this point, we have to know what God people are actually serving if they're going to be in rulership and leadership positions, because whatever God they serving, you will see their tree. And when you see their tree and the fruits that's produced from this tree, that's when you be able to see what God they serving. And the reason that race relations is what they is in this country right now, and what they've always been, is because one one group who has received the offenses from those who have perpetrated the wickedness onto them have never risen up in violence to fight back directly with the individuals who perpetrated the wickedness. Mama always tell us when we go to school, when we out there on the block, starting from real young, boy, you don't be out there getting bullied. You don't let nobody hit on you. You don't be out there getting bullied, and you don't let nobody hit on you. You know. And if you get hit on, you better do some swinging back. Because if you come back in this house crying and you didn't fight the way I showed you and the way I told you to, I'm going to make you go back out there, then I'm going to whoop you myself when it's time for you to come back in. Win, lose, or draw, you got to go back out there and fight. Now, I'm just repeating what I was taught. Bruh Carlton Way, much love, family. Peace to you too, fam. I hope everything is going well with you on the home front. I I was debating even making this video talking about this in this live, but one thing about True Jew, I just have a hard time keeping my mouth closed where injustices prevail. I don't care what I'm peddling, I don't care what I'm selling, I don't care how I'm hustling. Wrong is wrong, right is right. And I come from that school where two wrongs don't make a right. They make a wrong wrong. You know, fighting fire with fire ain't necessarily the way to get down to get down to a solution. But back to that bully thing, Mama and Papa always said, hey, if somebody bullying you, you have the right to defend yourself and you have the right to fight back. Well, when we was taken from our tribal nations, when we was taken from our ancestral lands, when we was taken as already being different tribes and nations and put together, whether we was on this continent already, or whether we was on the African continent, or whether we was in the Caribbean, wherever we was at, we was already part of our own nations. And when we was all put together, there was strife even in that. Just because we was all black folk don't mean we all understood one another. And it don't mean that we all got along. And many times, the individuals who put us together after stealing us and taking us as prisoners of war knew the inclinations that we had toward one another in order to keep us separated, even while we was put together. Now, I'm going to be saying some things in this live that's going to affect you. It's going to emotionally stir you up. But I'm going to do my best to say these things in a way where light prevails and where love prevails. Because that was part of the dilemma in even wanting to make this live, was that it's such a sensitive topic and subject. I was getting my stomach turning. I was getting sick to my stomach, even thinking about this this Emmett Till case, or a lack of a case, I should say, because it then got threw out. Now, what am I talking about? Well, 1955, for all of y'all that don't know, 1955 was a heck of a year in this country. 1955, a little boy named Emmett Till went down to Mississippi to visit his family on vacation. While he was down there, he was accused of making lewd comments and grabbing on a 21-year-old white girl who was in her family store in Money, Mississippi. He was falsely accused by this girl, this young woman, I should say, and she accused him to her then husband and her brother-in-law. They went, that was my back window. They went later that evening with pistols in hand to Emmett Till's family house in Mississippi, and they kidnapped him and abducted him at gunpoint from his home. They brutally beat him, savagely beat him. They beat him to a bloody pulp. 14-year-old boy. Okay, I need y'all to hear this. 14-year-old boy. He was taken into the swamps of Mississippi. They wanted to feed him to some gators. That's what they wanted to do. But where they was at, it just happened to not be no gators in the area. So instead, they tied a heavy fan blade to his body after he was brutally beaten by them. They latched this fan blade onto his body and they dumped him into the swamp in order to hide his body, in order to drown him further, in order to conceal the damage that was done to this 14-year-old boy. A few days later, his body was found mangled, horribly beaten, almost unrecognizable, had it not been for him, his family knowing that he was abducted and taken a few nights before. Before he was abducted, he was in his bed, asleep. This was late at night. Once he was taken from the home, he was brought to the young white woman, 21 years old. And at that point, she began feeling remorse of the lie that she told. So she tried to, according to her narrative, talk her husband and her brother-in-law out of harming this little boy. But it didn't work. They didn't want to believe her. because they already had a sense of hatred buried deep within their heart, which caused them to do such a heinous act. They had no sense of pity or forgiveness or remorse. And I use those words lightly because forgiveness alludes that something erroneous was done by the little boy and he was falsely accused. But even if he was falsely accused or he did say and do what they accused him of, he could have been forgiven where love prevailed and where light prevailed. But that's not the case. Instead, after she made her alleged plea to keep them from harming him, they took him, and that's when the brutal onslaught began. Why am I talking about this some 77 years later? Well, new evidence popped up recently about this. New evidence. A group of students was down in Lafleur County courthouse in Mississippi, where they found in the courtroom basement an unserved arrest warrant. Yes, y'all heard that right. An unserved arrest warrant for this young woman, 21 years old, her husband of the time, and her brother-in-law. That unserved warrant would be the beginning of the evidence of privilege that they received for being of the ethnic background that they were. The husband and brother-in-law were arrested, but not from that unserved warrant, and they were acquitted of all charges, including murder. The 21-year-old woman was never tried or spoken to in court. That's the first piece of evidence that just surfaced, an unserved arrest warrant, which would mean that there was some suspicion that some criminal activity took place, but somebody, someplace told someone not to serve that warrant. The next piece of evidence that just surfaced is a memoir, unpublished, written by the 21-year-old woman herself. Yes, bruh, she needs to be in prison. Now, this part might get you. She wrote a memoir detailing her place within this heinous crime. It went unpublished, but nonetheless, she has a memoir. All of her words had a blind eye toward them. And this is the cold part about it. The chief of staff to the attorney general in Mississippi has decided that not only will they not press charges based off of the new evidence that has surfaced, but they are going to and have thrown the case out entirely as if it never existed. And the cherry on top, the part that really got to me, was the 21-year-old woman is still alive to this day, and she is now 87 years old. And Emmett Till, if he were to still be alive this day, he would be around 81 years old, about the age of many of our grandparents today. Had he been alive, he would have definitely been a hero. And he would have definitely been somebody that we wanted to talk to and learn from, that could give us a true account of his experience as a young so-called black boy from Mississippi by way of Chicago back down to Mississippi. Yes, knowledge is power, bruh. Thank you for tapping in with me. Now, I had to ask myself, why was this case thrown out? Was it hatred? Was it prejudice? Was it fear? Was it a deep sense of guilt that says, well, if they admit the wrongdoing, then they'll have to live with the acceptance of the wrongdoing and all of the backlash that'll come after all these years? You know, it's real funny. A few days ago, the Olympic Committee turned over a ruling for one of this country's greatest athletes, Jim Thorpe, an indigenous brother who won the decathlon, and they did decathlon or 4x4 or a high jump or a discus throw would be every single one. They went over to Europe alongside our because of the true science moving in order not to address real. But they side over here is out to economic they can and, and as long as too freely. California has laws. I was just looking at this Cain Velasquez situation. Fear that we most of us have been placed under, knowing that we live the erroneous statements of including who are from the ethnic group of the person when there's something wrong, when there's some injustice that is being served. Is good. Time after time, offenses take thought that a people the justice that they very daunting. It could be very scarce. We need justice for all of those molested. And this white woman from Mississippi, she was talking about race relations and the fear that for rights with black folks. What kind of this is not because if you know about the poison poisonous version of that snake. Yeah. Now, that form of prejudice could possibly still on the video from the white woman. I that they had when it came to equal rights. A supposed to, you see, if this country was under anarchy in this countries, and we have to ask doing schmoozing with the representing in this country's closet that have not. I hope y'all seeing as if crimes that he committed against innocent children. Then you have a hard-working, dedicated father who would never think of committing acts like this against any child or anybody, and only sought to defend his family's honor and protect his son, and to show his son that he believed and that he listened to his son. And this man, for defending his family, will get 20, while a little 14-year-old boy in 1955 had a heavy fan blade tied to his body, dropped into a swader, and every single individual involved with that murder admitted that they were wrong. One of them did, and the 87-year-old lady. And their sympathy given towards this 87-year-old lady, as if to say she's too old to be thrown in jail. She's too old to receive a punishment. So just let her stay free the rest of her years. We couldn't possibly arrest this woman for crimes committed against a boy who's been gone almost 77 years. Let it just stay free. Okay. Okay. That's how we doing. And you see, this is the problem, y'all. Every other group in this world gets a chance to stand up for the injustices against them. But as soon as these so-called African Americans get to standing up, we are the problem. Now, I will never agree with the rioting and the destruction and the looting of the stores in our communities when uh, acts of crime against us take place by other nations. And I will never stand when it take place. It take place. That's a witness. But it get crime this, that it needs to in order for the emotional scarring funeral to be open. Can you imagine fighting fighting for his family and his son's honor and his honor as a father, totally backward. Only a sad day. She did not get pressured to speak the president, the congressmen and women. Oh, one thing now, consider yourself blessed. Consider yourself blessed. Hand in order to get you and your family into a place. But I ain't no rat. I'm gonna get it. Ooh, I might do what I birds, but I ain't no pigeon on no stool. Community. When we stop harming one, yeah, I'm gonna wrap this to look deep within your ears. Enough. True, you don't need to add on to that. I don't need. You feel me? I don't need to be a 5 supporters, and at the 570 something supporters. Y'all remember, I don't call y'all subscribers. Whatever. If y'all rocking with me, it's because y'all was led to me. Said resonated with you. But this is need to come to a place in our minds going on and make honest assertion. And I previously got up there and said what she needed to say. But at the same time, I often question all of the white folk that are good hearted people. I realize that there's a lot of fear in good hearted people. People are afraid to shake up the status quo. People are afraid to go against their brother or their cousin who might not be good. You know what? I'm from California. Let me say this, then I think I get off. I'm from the Bay Area. Right next to my city, Vallejo, is the Napa wine country, the world famous Napa wine country, where people from all over the world come and visit. We have an acronym for Napa. If you from the Bay, you know what I'm talking about. Especially if you from Vallejo. We have an acronym said Napa means no African people allowed. That's what Napa stand for to a lot of us. I have friends in Napa. I had this one white boy partner in particular. I won't say his name, but he was real cool to me, and I was real cool with him. He's a musician, and you know one thing about music is it unites all walks of people. I'm a musician, so we actually connected on. And he said, "Man, Jew, you're so cool, man. You know, I would invite you over to my house, but it's like, I live on a farm out there in Napa, and my dad, bro, he's just so racist. Like, if he saw you with me and I brought you over to my house, he would call you all kind of ends. Now, he didn't say the N word. He just said he would call you the N word, and then he would probably kick me out of his will. So look, Jew, as soon as my dad kicks the bucket, I'm gonna invite you. I said, hey, bruh, don't speak like that about your dad, man. Don't wish that kind of harm on him. Don't do that. Don't do that, bruh. Don't do that. Don't do that. Listen, I understand your dad is from a different era than what we from. If you want to rock with me, I'm not gonna hold no ultimatum against you. You go on and do what you got to do. You know, you don't gotta excuse your dad for anything because you still want to make this music and you still want to do what we got to do in the studio to get this song done. Then you'll figure out a way to make it happen. But you don't gotta wish death onto your dad, and you don't gotta bring up your family will and none of that sort of thing and feel threatened by my presence so you don't get kicked out of your will and all of this. And that's when a new perspective was placed onto me about what's really going on a lot in the white community. You see, a lot of white folks, not every white folk, but a lot of white folks come from some sort of affluence. And most white folks that's Generation X on up, Generation X, and them folks is not really racist, y'all. If they are, it's a real small number. That small number still exists only because they might have a certain proclivity towards their racist parents. Like, I just want y'all to really pay attention to what's going on in the land right now. But most white folks born in the 80s and the 90s, they not racist. Now you get some pockets of racism where it's ignorance. It's ignorance that's being perpetrated, but it's not racism. What you really see is scaredness and fear of being removed from affluence in a highly competitive society, and nobody wants to be removed from whatever comforts that they've received in life. This is part of what's really going on. The psychology behind why we still see the racial tensions in this land. All the young body white folks who are standing with black folks on the street. See, salute to y'all. But we have to remember that this country and the media, as it's been presented to us, was specifically formulated day in and day out to keep all of us separated. This is why it's such a difficult topic to speak on. Because on one hand, you have these pockets of unity, but the pockets of unity reside with the people who don't have the power. The pockets of disunity, the pockets of control, the pockets of prejudice and racism that make the decisions do not stand with the people. And when you look at the people in position who are not melanated people, who are those of European descent who really don't want to see a change for good, it makes it difficult to look at those of their children, nephews, nieces, grandchildren who do want to see changes for good. Warren Buffett got a granddaughter who stayed in the Bay last time I checked. This young lady is just, she's awesome. She's stellar. But she got kicked out of her will. She got kicked out of his will. Warren Buffett's granddaughter, y'all look it up. Just put Warren Buffett's granddaughter, the one who got kicked out of his will. You'll see immediately that this young girl, she's a woman now, but you'll see that, whoa, she got her head on straight. And she's so serious about standing with the people that she don't care nothing about her grandfather's billions. She don't care nothing about receiving any inheritance from him. And the more white folks that be like her and say, you know what, I'm gonna get it out the mud. if I gotta get it out the mud, if I gotta get it out the mud instead of standing with my racist grandparents or my racist parents who are threatening me every day with not having this black friend or that black friend, because if I do, they'll kick me out they will, then so be it. So be it. But we don't have enough of that. And this the other thing. A lot of folks is afraid to be kicked out of their will because, like I said, it's so competitive out here. And the more that false narratives are presented, false benefits are given to so-called black people, like affirmative action way back then and Black Lives Matter, all this bull crap that don't help us at all. The perception of benefit is going to keep so-called white folks in a position that they are in and don't want to be in, where discomfort is concerned. So we have to we really have to know who we dealing with on all sides. We have to be people of our word, and we have to be able to uh, stand strong in our convictions with one another. Like I said, I never agree with us destroying and bombing and catching flame to the stores in our own communities, let alone any store. I will stand for economic control, economic wisdom, controlling our resources in such a way where we manage those resources amongst ourselves. I always stand for that. I always stand for us building for ourselves and not being within a victim mentality, so that we can finally return to championship hood the way that we need to amongst our people and be our own heroes, our own heroes. Yes, I will stand for that. I won't stand for a fire meet fire, a fire fight fire mentality, because I don't want to be sucked into the wickedness of those who have committed wicked acts against us. I don't want to do the same thing that was done against us to them, because then I'm not going to be no better. And what about they babies who are the victims of the heinous acts that we could commit against them? Those babies don't know nothing about no racism and prejudice. That stuff is taught, and then it's inherited genetically. There's a predisposition after many years and generations of one group being racist and another group taking the racism. This is scientifically proven. But that doesn't give us a right to then exact racism or reverse racism back. We have to figure out another way. We have to figure out another way. And we know across the board that as long as people can manage their economics, as long as people know how to funnel their finances the correct way, that's when you start seeing change. When China begins annexing countries from doing business with them and focus solely on Chinese empowerment, look at what happens in China. Okay? When Russia focuses on Russia solely, look at what goes on in Russia. When Britain focuses on Britain solely, look what happens in Britain. When Saudi Arabia focuses solely on Saudi Arabia, look what happens in Saudi Arabia when it comes to economics. These countries become financial powerhouses. I've always said one of the first things so-called black folk in this country need to do is we need to create our own currency. We need to finally create our own currency. We need to create our own presses, our own printing presses. We need to create our own plates, because the currency we use now in dollar form is owned by the Federal Reserve anyway. It's not owned by this country. So why don't we formulate our own reserve and our own currency with our own faces on it, with our own heroes on it, with our own denomination system, and we begin to back that currency by our own resources. Then we get smart and we own our own land with our own natural resources. and we don't sell to anyone outside of our own people group. And if we do sell to people outside of our people group, we must force them to use our currency in order to purchase our goods. We build up our own communities with our own resources backed by our own currency, and we control our currency that way. We don't have to worry about nobody spending with us or spending with anybody else because we have our own resources, our own corporation. We have our own business structures. We have our own uh, trades. And once we get that, then we have leverage. Once we have leverage, we have a sense of control. And once we have a sense of control, we have a sense of dignity restored to us. And then we can talk about equality. I'm not with the false equality talk, though. Oh, we equal, but none of us is in positions of power. Then we not equal. Oh, we equal, but the numbers of incarcerated people in prison is still lopsided. The numbers of free people is still lopsided. The prison system was created solely to pick up those who were previously enslaved in this country, who didn't know how to read and write, who couldn't get jobs and trades outside of the plantation. So cold, this game. The police system was created as a patty roller system to originally capture individuals who no longer wanted to be enslaved, as if being a free man was wrong, as if wanting to be a free woman was wrong. To be considered three-fifths of a human being and to still have that language in the United States Constitution is wrong. There's still so much emotional scarring that has to be healed before we can be considered equal on paper. That is not even funny. So if we can fix these things, I agree with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he spoke on nonviolent tactics. I agree with the Honorable Brother Malcolm X. He said that we must defend ourselves and our families against anyone who seeks to harm us. I also agree with that. So there has to be a balance. There has to be a return of a sense of dignity. And I think right now, 2022, what I'm really seeing the most successful pattern, unfortunately, is every man lead his family for himself. And as that family grows and he encounters like-minded individuals, then he's able to form community with these individuals. And that is how soundness and a sense of balance and dignity is restored until ultimate healing can take place. Justice for Emmett Till, justice for Cain Velasquez and his family, justice for all of the innocent children who are abused, molested, who are harmed, abducted, and killed, justice for all of the elderly who are targeted, heinous acts committed against them, justice for all of the women who are raped and battered and don't receive justice, who are not believed when their accusers are let go free and they have to deal with not only the emotional trauma but the fear day in to day out of their perpetrators still being free, walking the streets, not knowing if they'll strike again. justice for all of the innocent men who are behind bars right now, serving unjust sentences for crimes that shouldn't dictate that number that has been placed on them. We must see liberty and true justice for all if this country is going to stand, if this country is going to move forward and propel itself and continue to be a face of the nations of this world. But we know, according to certain ancient books, that because of the low vibe that this country holds, like Rome before it, and like Babylon before that, like Sodom and Gomorrah, in between Rome and Babylon, we see this country headed the same place. We see this country headed into self-destruction. And it's sad to say that there'll be many victims that this country and the self-destructive spirit that this country is now under. Like I told my young brothers before, you out there getting it, keep your head on a swivel. Get back to your family. Check your intent, check your heart. Make sure you're doing whatever you got to do for the right reasons, even if it's not necessarily a sound circumstance that you would want to see yourself in. Do your best to remove the guilt complex that's within your heart day to day, so you don't pray without ceasing and recognize that everything happens for a reason. And when your situation can better itself, you do everything in your power to leave from amongst the threat and the haters and the vultures and the schemers and the slithery ones. And you get to a place where you can continue to take care of your family. You need to start looking into land. You need to start looking into rural placements. You need to start looking into places with natural resources like timber, wild turkey, fresh water streams, places where you could place water wells, places where you could raise dairy cows, places where you can raise chicken, places where you can raise fish and plant crops. You need to begin to look into these things. The hood not where it's at, but the hood come with all sorts of lessons, all sorts of street smart tactics that you could apply in these rural places when the time comes for you to leave and go to these rural places. Remember your lessons. And remember that these lessons can turn into blessings. That's what I call them. Not blessings. I call them blessings. Blessings mixed with lessons. Get your mind right so you can get your family out of Dodge. It ain't about running away. It's about strategy and play. It's about standing strong and living another day. It's about not getting taken out prematurely and landing in the grave. It's about standing like a free man and not being no slave. Look, it's your bro, True Jew. I love y'all to life always. Most High Mama, Papa willing, I'll be back with another one. But until then, stay blessed. Stay vigilant. Gone.